Are there any of you here that attended that went home and made a knife?
Nope, I made 4.
2 of you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't here.
I missed it.
Are there any of you other guys who are here present that were present at that last class?
Yeah, I was there.
Okay. Well, one thing, and maybe it's only my misguided opinion, I think people get turned off or intimidated by the heat treating thing. Because one thing I've noticed, anything to do with torch work, too many guys, they shy away from it. They don't want to do it. They don't want to get involved in it. And it does take a little experimentation because it's not clear-cut black and white always. So I'm going to take a little different approach this time. And what I've done is you're going to start out you're going to make yourself a handle. And what I've done is I've numbered all these dudes. 1 through 4, 5, 6 still comes after 5, doesn't it? Yeah, okay. So, step 1, you're going to decide, you can make yourself a mock-up. That's what I did. This was a different style handle. But just take some styrofoam, make yourself a knife handle that you think is comfortable for yourself. This was thin sheets. I just glued 2 3/4-inch pieces together and make a little mock-up. And then what I like to do is get some vellum and then make a permanent pattern from that so I can keep it and make repetitious handles. So I make a little mock-up, model, prototype handle. I'll make a pattern and then decide what size blocks you need. And this is just my approach to doing it. I take my block of wood, I put a top and side center line on it, and do put a center line on your pattern. The reason being, you're going to use this to locate your blade holes and subsequently the blade. You don't want a blade that's skewed on the handle. So you want the blade to run true to the center line of the knife on both planes, the top and side. So what I do is I lay it out. Does everybody see that block of wood? Top, side, center line. And then I'll take it, lay the pattern out just like this. And if any of you want to utilize that particular handle pattern, you can copy this pattern here. These guys give you some paper. You can trace it. So I lay the top and the side center line out. Okay. Typically I use a standard, if I'm working with saber saw blades, I use a 3/4-inch hole spacing to put my pins in to pin the blade in. I just go ahead and drill them. If you feel at all hesitant about drilling them in here and then hope that you can drill them in the blade, that they'll match up, first drill the holes in the blade, and we'll go through that. Then you can lay your blade on here. I got one here that's drilled. Okay. This is the original pinhole from the saber saw. This one I drilled in. What you can do, if you feel more comfortable doing it, you can hold this down here and drill through it, use it as a template, and then you can pin this to your block of wood and drill the other hole. You get it lined up with true to your center line here. Then you can drill the other one. Then you won't have a problem with the thing matching up when you get to that point. once you got it laid out with the block still square, I bandsaw the hole in. You give yourself a mark here for the depth of your bandsaw cut for the blade. I go a little bit beyond it, go 16 beyond it, it doesn't make any difference. And very carefully bandsaw it in. Most of these blades are gonna run, I don't know, 40 some, between 40 and 50 thousandths thick. Your bandsaw blade is probably gonna cut finer than that. So I make as accurately as I can. I go down the center line with the bandsaw blade and then just skim each side off a little bit. Usually you're better off to stay a little on the tight side where your blade won't quite go in. Then what I do is I just take some sandpaper and start working it down there. If you have some thin metal shim or an old hacksaw blade, works good. You could take the teeth off the blade and use that to work it down in here and then get a nice fit for your blade. If your blade is snug, this is just a word of caution here. As you're fitting the blade in, because you want to try and get a pretty nice, reasonable fit. It doesn't have to be a force fit, but it should be snug. I like to use a vice grip to work it in and out. I would suggest you not do one of these numbers because you might end up wearing the blade. And the other thing is, I learned from experience, I didn't get stuck with it, but it slipped one time. Don't do it this way. Hold the blade from the side when you're fitting it in and out. Do it this way. That way if it slips, you ain't gonna get hurt. Okay, so once you've got, and then you'll drill your holes before you start doing any shaping on your bandsaw. So you got your holes in place. I like to do them at a drill press. You could do them freehand. Then take it and bandsaw the side profile. Don't cut it all the way off. Leave these on here. It gives you a base to flip it over to then do the top profile. Everybody follow that?
Cut the
So
center out.
you're just cutting it up to here and up to here, and then you go in here and do this. Then you can cut the top profile out, and then once you're that far, then these will just pop off for you. So then you got a roughed out handle, and from this point on, it's just a matter of rounding it off. Somewhere there's another. Right here, here it is.
Sorry.
You can do, that's all right. You can do it, you know, as a whittle job and sandpaper. If you have a belt sander, it's great because a combination belt disc sander, you can just spin it on there and round off the contours, and it works out real nice. And then I hand finish sanding it. But if there's anyone here that wants to trace that pattern, you're welcome to do it. Just mail me my royalty check at the end of the month because it's copyrighted.
You were gonna get that, weren't you?
Yeah, right. But anyway, it's here if you want to trace it. As far as the knives proper, you can do a real basic El Cheapo thing. A hacksaw blade, the only thing that's hard on a hacksaw blade is the teeth. What I call the backing, the body of the blade. It's not really hard, but I've been using, that's what this is.
That's one of my favorite knives. It gets a lot of use. I've been using that for 15 years, and it's still got a lot of life in it. You know, so if you don't want to mess around and do any heat treating or anything like that, just take a hacksaw blade, grind the teeth off of it. If you don't even have a bench grinder, you can do it with your little hand grinder. Take the teeth off and mount it in the handle, and this thing gets a lot of use. And all I do is strap it. But this one, you know, because it's just a crappy little blade, I abuse it a lot. I use it like I'm making feet trimming, and I like to use steel for feet, the core, trimming the epoxy off of it and stuff. But it hardly ever gets on a stone. It's mostly just strapping it. If I do happen to chip it, then I'll stone it. But the approach that we'll take, because it minimizes all the confusion and everything of the heat treating, is just using saber saw blades. They're already hard. The only thing you have to do by way of heat treating it is really drawing it down to drill one more hole in there, and I'll take you through that process. Rather than, as opposed to heat treating an entire blade. For some people, they don't want to do it, or they just feel inadequate about doing it. It's not difficult, but you never know what the steel analysis is that you're working with. So it does take some experimentation. These two blades here, to soften these up to the point where you can drill them, assuming you're using just a high-speed twist drill and you don't have a carbide drill. If you had a carbide drill, you could drill it, you know, in its state that it's in. If you're just using a standard twist drill, you cannot drill it. So you have to soften it up, draw some of the temper out of it. So, who is knowledgeable about construction tools? Oh, bimetal. Who had bimetal?
I brought some
You got
to do.
yeah. Get them guys. Don't use bimetal blades. He brought some down with the idea that perhaps somebody might want to use it for a knife blade. I screwed around with them. I can't do anything with them. And one of the reasons being, the way bimetal blades are made, I'm not wholly familiar with the process, but what they are is they're a steel core, and then through some process, whether it's like an electroplate or it's a sprayed-on process, they put a hard outer coating on it. So in effect, it's laminated. When you grind through the laminate, you're into that softer core. And I tried making blades out of them. They're an absolute nightmare. If you want to fool around with it, good luck. Maybe you'll have better success than I did. But I got nowhere with them. My advice is stay away from them, because to me they were an absolute headache.
Thanks for bringing a big pile of headache in.
They've been in that sawzall block for 20 years. I still can't get rid of them.
If you use just...
Any good yet?
Yeah, they were dull.
If you use just standard saber saw blades, they're quite hard. They're plenty hard enough for an excellent quality knife. And your blade shape is limited by the size of the blade. But most of the knives, my preference is thin blade knife like that anyway. This happens to be, some of these wider ones, they're bandsaw blades. We'll deal with that. They're
industrial quality bandsaw blades. They're 3/4 inch. We'll deal with that next time. Tonight, we'll just concentrate on making a knife using saber saw blades for blade stock.
Did you say what kind of steel that is?
Well,
Is it a
they're
carbon
all,
steel?
they would be high carbon, high speed steel.
So it's fairly hard, or
It's
very hard.
quite hard, it's very hard. To most people, it doesn't make much sense because you don't have the experience doing it, but you can roughly calculate how hard a blade is. Try filing it.
But it doesn't-
If you're using your file on a hard blade,
Yeah.
don't do this. Don't run the length of the file because you'll just destroy your file. You use the tail end of the file over here. 'Cause you
So
never,
basically
you
it
never,
doesn't
you never
cut
use
it.
that anyway.
You basically say it won't cut, right?
If that file zings on it, do it the other way. Slide the file over the blade.
Yeah.
See how it just zings
Yep.
over it? That's hard.
It's not cutting at all.
If, oh, here. Now try an edge on this with the file. You can see the difference. And that's
Yeah,
pretty
I
hard.
feel it.
Now, the measurement system, the most common one is,
Rockwell.
Rockwell, yeah, Rockwell hardness. If you have a Rockwell hardness, this is probably about 44 Rockwell. It's what they call pre-hard. You could even, that's probably about what a hacksaw blade is, except for the hardened tooth edge. It's tough, but it's really not the greatest knife blade because it will dull up quicker than a harder one. But you can see the difference between that blade and this. See, this I can file quite readily. That blade, it just zings off of it.
Yeah. So most of your saber saw blades are.
They're
of that
gonna be
hardness?
hard.
Yeah.
They're gonna be quite adequate for a knife blade. Okay, I should have a couple more of these blades floating around. Does everyone here have a bench grinder? Or is there somebody that doesn't have a bench grinder and doesn't want to buy one? Well, you all got bench grinders.
Amazing.
All right, because.
We're real men.
Yeah. What I did do, it was just an errant thought. Maybe there's somebody who doesn't. You see another one of these blades around?
You already got some pre-made, roughed out, you mean?
Yeah, oh, here it is, I got it here. Just as a thought for somebody who doesn't have a bench grinder and doesn't want to pop the money for one, use your Dremel or whatever you got with a suitable grinding wheel in it. You could do the same thing, it's just going to take you longer, you know.
Aren't there some blades that come with a kind of a knife edge already for cutting soft material?
There are, yeah.
Saber saw.
I've not
Saber
used
saw
any
blades.
of them, yeah.
I've seen
I
it.
know I had a package of those once, I haven't seen them.
Yeah, they come with a knife edge. What the hardness is on them, I couldn't tell you. I have a bunch of them at home. I got thousands of these things at home. I'll tell you a funny story how I acquired them. Probably about 40 years ago, and when I lived down in Illinois, a couple doors down from where I worked was a job shop that manufactured blades under all different kinds of brand names. So I got Milwaukee, I got General Electric, just you name it, and I got them at home. What they would do, it's a high-speed manufacturing process. And these things, they run them through these high-speed presses. They form the teeth, they punch the holes, and then they cut them off. And they're so fast, it's an actual blur. Just hundreds of them a minute, you know, coming out of the end of this high-speed equipment that they had there. Well,
they were so cheap for them to make. Maybe the packaging was wrong. It might have been stenciled crooked on the blade, or the paint job was flawed or something. They would trash them. Well, when I found that out, I used to go dumpster diving all the time. I'd go down there at lunchtime, it was only a couple doors down, and I'd come back with just boxes like this, full of blades and all. And then I found it was kind of like a junk dealer store. He sold everything from lumber. Hey, I explained to him how I was getting them, that I was dumpster diving every day at lunchtime. I said, this is where I work. I gave him the phone number, and he did. He called my boss up, checked up on me. Anyway, then he wouldn't even buy anymore. So over the years,
dumpster was.
over the years, I've been giving them away and everything, and I still probably have several thousand of them left at home. But more than I'll ever use before I die, I guess. Okay. So let's see where we're at here. So we got a handle. Oh, on Sweden, they're $12 a piece if anybody wants to buy them. They're great for sharpening, and especially when you're doing your grinding to shape the blade initially rather than have it in a good handle and get that messed up. So I use 3/4 inch spacing. So make yourself a little handle here. 1/8 pinholes in the blade. I use 1/8 brass stock to pin the blades in. A number 5 screw will fit your 1/8 hole. And this is handy to have because I use it for sharpening the blade and on the grinder and everything.
You use that just when you're building the knife.
Yeah, just when I'm rough shaping the blade, rather than have it in the handle. What I like to do is get the blade finished. There, you can pass these around. Let me mark these.
Is it just the pins that hold the blade in on the finished knife, or do you
Yeah.
epoxy it in place either?
I put epoxy in there, but not to hold, it's not to hold the blade in, it's just to fill the hole up.
Kind
You
of
can
rivet
use-
it, don't you?
Huh?
You kind of rivet it, don't you?
Yeah, we'll go through that
Yeah.
tonight. I'll finish one up and I'll mount it in here. Okay, I'm gonna pass these 2 blades around. The one with the blue marking on it is just rough ground. Just did it on a bench grinder. The other one, and I do have one of these paper wheel things to use with an abrasive, and they're nice, but for the initial sharpening and to get this nice and even, I like to hand sharpen them on a stone. I use just a combination oil stone. Once I get it roughed out on the grinder, I'll use the rough side, and then I'll use the smooth side just to shape it.
Can we see your stone?
Have you ever used any of those those new diamonds?
I don't like to use them. They're a little too aggressive.
Ceramics, boy, they were.
Yeah, and for finishing, I've got some ceramic plates, which are very good. And another tip, I'll bring some in next time because I got some left over from a tiling job. You get any smooth ceramic floor tile, it's good.
Not the glazed one, but just.
It can be glazed,
Okay.
glazed ceramic, and it works great. I've got some strips, I can pass them on, give them away. It works real good. This particular ceramic it was done on this spiffy little handle here. It just hand ground on the bench grinder.
That's Swedish hand.
Yep.
Yeah.
just trying to keep it all
Swedish
together.
imports.
Yeah, yeah. Out there in Buffalo, a lot of sweet till we.
Yeah. That's it.
Don't want to get hiccups when you're doing that too, Bob.
Hmm?
So you don't want to get a hiccup.
No, not when you're doing that. You swallow your nuts and you'd be in trouble.
Bob, if you
That's
got-
all right. I know you have a sense of humor.
Bob, if you got all those blades, you should bring them down and sell them to us guys 3 for $1.
That's rough.
I'm gonna give
Feel
you.
the burn.
3 for 12 cents.
That was inflation, that was back in the 50s when you did that.
Okay, the first thing you want to do, if you get any blades like this with plating on it, or they may be painted, get it off of there. Because you never know what's in that paint or that plating, and it smells to high heaven anyway. So what we're gonna do is, we gotta get another hole in here. And you want this black oxide coating that's on here. It's great because it keeps the blade from rusting, but you want to clean it off so you can see what the color of the steel is when you're heating it up. And just take some emery or sandpaper and clean that stuff off of there.
That don't burn off?
Well, the thing is, when you heat it up, who put that question to me? Oh, when you heat it up, you want to be able to see the color of the steel.
Yeah, I know, 'cause that don't burn off.
Well, you can't see the color of the steel. And the biggest mistake most people will make is they get it too hot. And I'm going to show you about the color range you're going to be shooting for.
The paint stinks too.
Huh? Yeah, it does, it smells nasty. Yeah, technical jargon. But then what you have to do is go through a process of what they call drawing it. You draw it down from that peak hardness. If you send this stuff out to a commercial heat treater, it's literally glass hard when it comes out of that heat treat furnace, to the point where, depending on what type of steel it is, it's very hard but very brittle. That could crack it and break it. So hardness doesn't always equate to durability. It could be brittle and fracture very easily. On a knife blade, you want toughness combined with a certain degree of hardness. So just accept my word for it, you're not going to drill a hole in here. So I'm going to show you how we can deal with that. If you can get a hold of any carbide rod, make yourself a nice carbide scraper. It's a handy little gizmo to have. Because that will scratch, you can make a scratch mark on hard steel.
Now, they sell these at Rockler, right?
A knife?
Let's see. Because I'm getting old and frail, I need some eye help here. This light isn't the greatest in here.
I think there's a lot of people here that own them. Or
Just
going
don't
to
necessarily own up to it.
Well, actually, because when I was employed, because of the kind of work I did, I've been wearing these things for 40-plus years. To me, they're like second nature. I feel naked without them.
Oh, come on, everyone left that one alone.
We don't. Same Megan.
Are you drawing the hardest now?
I've got to have a center line for my drill hole.
Here's how you draw hardness.
It's more than every crowd.
I know. God, it's usually me.
As soon as I see you walk through the door, I thought, oh boy, here we go. Scott's here.
You could do this after you soften it up too, but I'm doing it now because I want to show you something. One way to gauge the hardness of it is, everybody here, I presume, has a center punch.
Right next to my grinder.
Except I gave it to my kid the other day. Oh, I see it again.
So pin in his go-kart.
No lighting is added here. All right, this is sharp. I sharpened it before I left home tonight. I'm gonna show you what's gonna happen to it. We're gonna destroy it.
It's a guy thing.
And there's a reason for it. My perverted logic here.
Pass that around. Look at the end.
Round, huh?
Oh, yeah.
It flattened it out pretty good.
Still sharp. Didn't even put a dent in that, huh? Or did
Pretty
it?
sharp. Barely.
Yeah.
Just barely. That's
So
not
can you
sharp.
Oh, yeah,
avoid all the heat
that's-
treating if you use a
Yeah,
carbide
you
drill?
got a lot more heat
Yes.
to go.
So what we want to do now is draw some of the hardness out of that. Okay, pliers, pliers. Okay, and this is where it gets quirky, and you might have to do a little experimentation with your blades. This blade, I've had success in not quenching it, just letting it air cool. This one here, I found out I had to water quench it because I couldn't draw it down.
Are they different brands or?
Yeah, it's different steel analysis. So you're gonna have to do a little experimentation. Nothing is lost. If it doesn't work for you, then you just shift gears and change direction a little bit. Maybe it's more heat and quenching it, maybe it's less heat. Would somebody like to get me some water in here? It's about 3/4 full, if you would, please. Yeah, these are all gonna be different, and you're gonna have to do a little bit of experimenting with them. So,
But most of the time, you heat that, you stick it in water, it gets hard on you.
well, all sticking it in water does, that doesn't harden it. That stops it where it is. That's what the quenching does. The quenching doesn't harden it. It's the level of heat that hardens it, and the quenching stops it right there. Water is a very severe quench. It's the severest. You got water quench, oil quench, and air quench. Air quench is, thank you, is very moderate and mild. Oil quench is a little more severe, and water is very severe, but we're not gonna put that kind of heat on here that it's gonna make any difference. And like I said, and keep this in mind, most people's tendency is to overheat it. They start getting up to a bright cherry red where they're getting to the critical temperature where you're actually going to be adding hardness. All we want to do is, most of you know if you're grinding on a blade, you never want it to turn blue on you because you're going to be drawing the temper out of it.
That's where you want to be with this. Just a very low heat and without overdoing it. If you can squeeze around without getting in each other's way, and because this is the same blade as this, I know what I'm shooting for. I would describe it as a very light cherry red. By cherry red, I don't mean a brilliant bright red. If you took a basic red color, throw some purple in it, and add a little more black to it, that's about the color you're looking for. That's about what a cherry would look like.
Like a clean cherry.
Yeah, something like this almost. You know, just, in fact, I don't even want to go that bright. And you don't want the heat to travel down on the blade. I got it marked where my hole is going to be. So take your ratty old pair of pliers and grab it, and that'll block the heat from.
Blocker?
It's a heat sink.
That'll keep the heat from traveling down the blade.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm. Huh.
And if you can all squeeze around without getting in each other's way, I'll show you. You'll find it's, well, no, this is good. Just very moderate diffused light. It's pretty good. If you were doing this in bright daylight, it totally alters the picture, because then you'd be adding more heat to the blade than you want because of the brightness of the surrounding area. And just when I start to see some red color in there, I know I'm there. Okay, it's about there now.
I have to do some preparation, 'cause I've got it, I just haven't converted it to DVD.
Okay.
But yeah.
Now, this one is sharp.
On the website.
Oh, not the video, no, too much, it would, too much memory. Just the pictures.
Okay.
See, and if you want to look at that, you can still see my scribe lines on there, and there's barely a mark from that first center punch. You can pass that around, because I want you to see the difference in it now, after I heated it up.
Now, do you need to do that down the length of that blade, Bob, to grind those teeth off?
When I was making this, the guy was telling me, because I was using the belt sander for part of it.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, the oxides in the belt I was using, he says they're gonna start pulling the temper out of your metal.
That's if you get the metal blue.
Was that, Scott? How'd you put that?
Yeah, I would think
Oxide.
you'd have to get it quite hot to
do that?
if it's gonna have an effect at all, and I can't say that it is or isn't, I don't know.
Right, but you can put it right back in, right, with the heat treat and all that stuff too.
Now, if you burn
Not
it out,
necessarily.
No,
you burn the carbon out, you ain't gonna put it in.
right. That's
You
blue.
can with a carburizing flame on an oxygen acetylene torch. You can.
Well, that's what I use for that.
If you want to get it harder, just put a feather edge on the end of your comb. Or
Okay.
on your oxyacetylene, that'll
Oof,
put carbon in it.
Okay, well, it dimpled it deeper, but I suspect it's not soft enough.
So you just go and do it again?
Yeah, but what I'm gonna do, and I wasn't thinking, this one I water quench, that one I do. Just let it air cool.
Yeah, that's right, you did say that.
Yeah, and I went ahead and I did it.
Water quenched it. Yeah.
What'd you get for
Oh,
that?
but that's a lot bigger, because
You aren't getting to a critical temperature until this thing starts glowing really bright red. Then you're getting up around 1,400 degrees, and
Stop when the blade starts to melt.
you won't melt it. You couldn't generate enough heat with this to melt it. Okay, see, it's just starting to show some color.
You don't want to pass it around now, do you?
Yeah, here.
Like this.
Right, that went around quick.
Didn't take long.
You get tattoos with a little hole in the hand.
See how quick you can juggle.
Right.
Big fish with one
Want to
of
see a
those
bunch of old parts
fish
move fast.
baskets on the grill a couple weekends ago. You know, you have the thing where you close it and then the little ring goes over it. And you're, wow, that looks done. And all of a sudden the ring moved and I went, oh.
Okay, I got one sharp.
I let go of it really, really, really fast.
Fish get done?
Yeah, it was awesome.
What kind of fish? Trout?
Salmon.
Salmon?
Yeah.
Coho?
King.
King.
You go out there, did you?
No, but they're running full bore. They must go out there. 200 pounds of salmon in less than
Oh, this
3 hours.
rather than Alaska. My son just went to Alaska.
Look at the backside, see it transfer, don't grab this end.
Yeah.
It might still be warm up there, I don't think.
Where'd you go at?
See it transfer.
Yep. Getting there.
Kid was kind of working.
So,
And your purpose now is just getting the starting point for your drill, right?
Who's got?
reel them in.
Try it with or without a filter. They're damn good.
Yeah.
I wonder if I brought a
You can do it in your Weber.
No, I like
The other thing they eat up there a lot is, they like halibut enchiladas.
Oh, that halibut's good anyway.
You gotta cook it some other way, because there's no flavors of the halibut. You gotta add
There
stuff.
isn't?
Not the halibut by itself, there's very little flavor to halibut.
very little.
You have to add, the more stuff you add to it, the better it gets, because it takes on that flavor.
Well,
never
up
eaten
there
it.
where they
Oh,
go,
wonderful.
they get in
Oh.
a boat and go 70 miles up the river to this guy's cabin. That's the only way you get to it. He let you fly out and land. Anyway, they eat nothing but moose, deer, salmon, halibut. He went shrimping.
Oh, yeah, they get huge
Gosh, he
shrimp
had
up
these-
there.
Yeah, he brought back 12 of these tiger shrimp. Must have been that long.
Oh, yeah. Well, we were up there for a week out of Ketchikan. And we had some of the biggest shrimp I've ever seen. Then we had crab legs, all you could eat crab legs till you just stop. I mean, and it's all stuff that they catch right there. Then we had halibut, then we had salmon, then one night we had steaks.
Which cost
Mucho.
Get that head shaved. My brother lives in Sitka, we go set crab pot for 3 days. I got pictures of my boys sitting there holding shrimp. They're just
Prawns.
It's huge. It's amazing. Just amazing. Oh, no, there's
3 weeks the Browns will be moving in. 20 pounds.
Get it in the fly rods.
No one fishes them.
And he had somebody.
My boy's neighbor went down and watched 24 browns, averaging 16 to 18 inches.
They were only there.
They had to come home because he ran out of worms. I says, "Where was the game warden?" He says, he wasn't around.
So when they got back from up on the river.
We went out 18-foot boats.
Oh, really?
We were fishing sand.
You probably want to make it a little.
One of them was 17, 18 years old. And now it's 17 pounds, that's like 100 pounds.
Salmon?
Halibut. We went back to the same spot, and I put down the same one, and I got 50 pounds.
My son said he said he doesn't really like
Right.
halibut fishing because he's got a bad back. He's had a couple of back surgeries.
That's what my son did all summer, he's working halibut.
Bring up a manhole cover.
Yeah.
He emailed a picture of a 301 pounder that they caught. One of the clients did. They put him in a Zodiac. Let it tow him around for 45 minutes, just tired out.
Tire it out,
So they
I
could
believe
bring
that.
it
Well, we were floating out to sea. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, we only had 17-pound tests. Most of these guys got 100-pound test or rope on them, for Christ's sake.
I was just watching this.
We didn't have to clean nothing. They cleaned everything for us, filled it all up. All we
Dan
did
and
was
them-
eat
Dan
steak
and
and
them
fish.
cleaned all
It's
their own.
butchering. It's not cleaning.
The other thing they caught is they caught a, no, it's reddish fish, it's red and yellow.
Rockfish.
No.
No, it was, I don't want to
Lord.
say angelfish, but I
No,
Oh, it looks just like a largemouth bass, too. Yeah.
not a green brown.
No, I mean,
It's, I know what it is.
I can't remember the name anyway, and then they caught a
It's not like, not a Lord Derby, not a Lord, Irish Lord, no.
Looks just like a largemouth bass, but dark.
Okay, we got the hole in, so that gives us our mounting holes. You could take it over to your bench grinder and grind the teeth off. Here's what I do prior to that.
Are we done with this? You wanna dump that?
Yeah, I have no need for it right now.
Is that one of those carbine wheels?
It's just
Cutting.
one of those resinoid bond cutoff wheels is all it is.
That can blow up on you. RPM, yeah.
Is there anybody here that never uses these? They're great.
Where'd you get those?
Dremel, they're cheap. You need an arbor and the wheels. They're great.
Menards has them.
Yeah,
Yeah, you got like Home Depot and Menards.
all kinds, anything with steel or metal, they're great. And they're very brittle. So if you're doing what I'm doing it on the side, just rounding these corners off, be careful because
You cut a nail off.
they're very brittle. They'll break and they'll go flying. So wear glasses when you use them.
When you're using it on the side, just don't put too much pressure.
Yeah, just very light.
Yeah.
I'll pass this around. and show you in a minute.
You buy the little mandrel, and then those things just screw, there's just a screw head on there, and it just screws right.
Okay, here's another use for that wheel.
What'd you cut off on that?
Just round corners.
I cut, there's a little end, see the two holes in there? You don't need all that excess, so I just take it off. You can leave it on if you want. I just, as a matter of fact, take it off. It's just excess and you don't need it. What I do is, because I've developed certain knife patterns and lengths that I like, again, I resort to these little vellum patterns like this, and I just keep them. They fit these blades. So what I do is I just decide what kind of a blade shape I want, and I go into my pattern file here and pull one out. So what I've done is I've marked this blade roughly, the length I want it, and the end shape. When you're doing this, aside from the caution that they are brittle, if they fracture, they fly, wear safety glasses, they get hot. The steel will get very hot, so be careful.
All I'm doing is getting rid of some of the excess on there. Okay, so now we got a blade that we can take it, grind the teeth off of it, and then we use our special imported blade holder here to take it. Once I grind the teeth off, then I'll mount it in my little blade holder, and I'll take it over to the bench grinder and I'll rough grind the edge on here.
Can you pop that puppy out of there? Just for a second.
And grind the teeth off and then grind the blade shape that I want, which is like where this one is. Then I would take it on a good quality stone, an oil stone. I'd start out, and this, you could do this 20 minutes of sharpening and you'll have it nice and sharp. Start out on the rough side and you look at it when it looks real flat and try and keep it nice and concentric, and put your spare eyeballs on and you can look at it and make sure that you're not sharpening too much to one side or the other side. Give me a piece of paper, somebody, please. Thank you. So that when you look at the blade, you don't want to end up with a blade that looks, if this is the center line of your blade, you don't want to end up with a blade that looks like that. You know, because you're sharpened it too far to one side. Try and keep it concentric and uniform. Yeah, you can tell. If you look at one of these guys here, and sometimes it helps to focus it, look at it against a light background and look at it through your little telescope here like this, and you can see where we're at now. Okay, so we have a handle that's ready to go, and we have a blade.
And a power hacksaw blade,
Steel.
that kind of blade.
No chainsaw.
The bar on
Oh,
it.
the bar on the chain.
Now you can, if you want, you can polish this blade up and make it look real pretty, you know, like some of these other ones are. If you got a nice edge on it, you're not cutting with the backside anyway. That's for show. That doesn't make any difference, you know. All this discoloration back here and these grind marks back here, they don't really mean anything. You're not cutting back there. If you got a nice edge on the blade, that's really all you need. But you can suit yourself, you know, if you want to make a work of art out of it.
You gonna pin it yet or what? You gonna pin it?
Yeah. So you got the blade, it's all ready to go. And then you have to find your brass rod. And then you have to go to your tool cabinet and get your pliers and cut a piece off. If you got too much sticking out, I'll probably end up trimming it off once I get the pin in place. But one thing you'll want to do, I've already done it, is to take and put a little chamfer in the wooden handle. The reason being, if this is your handle surface and you have a hole going through it, what you want to do is chamfer that edge just slightly. It doesn't take a lot. That's so when you mushroom, you all get that? Just put a little chamfer on the hole
I mean, in the whole.
in the wood, in your
Let that
handle.
Space out.
That's so that when you mushroom over your pin, it gives it some place to flow into. It doesn't take a lot. I'll show you, I'll pass this around and you can take a look at it. Anything.
Makes this burner.
Just enough so that when you peen it and you mushroom the ends of the rod over, it's got some place to flow into. It helps lock it in. Terribly, it carves nice. If you're looking for a great carving wood, Russian olive is good, and it has a really, where'd that piece go?
Right there.
Oh, yeah, it has a really nice color to it.
Yeah.
And this is all wood. I butchered trees at home. I cut the old lady's orchard down in the backyard. I got some pear and some apple wood.
I got some little
I took the Russian olive tree out of the front yard. The maple I got from somebody else. Some guy had some maple that he gave me, 1-inch full boards. Full 4-quarter boards, 5-quarter, some of them.
picked up a check on
Do you ever use,
Okay, so we have a blade that's all sharpened, we have a handle that's ready to go. And if Plocinski didn't fall asleep at the switch, these holes should line up here.
Apricot too.
Oh, yeah. I got some apple, trees. I bought Who is it?
Okay, you don't want too much sticking out. To start out peening, that's about right. You know, if you had a 16, 3/32, something like that, that's good. If you got too much sticking out, you run the risk you're just gonna end up bending it over instead of mushrooming it. There, I got just a slight misalignment in it, you can see. But all is not lost. We ain't gonna worry about that.
They would give a little bit, just hit it harder.
Get a sledgehammer.
Bigger hammer.
Yeah, just put a little taper to give yourself some lead, and it'll shear in tight.
Could you put that in the vise and do the same job as peening it, or?
No, like I said, I've never been able to do it right.
Well, you're gonna be able to do it now.
Yeah. Well, I always thought you needed like a round, something round, you stick it on there and then hit it and then it.
What's that?
Oh, yeah, in the regular, it's got a little hole, there's a pin you put on, you pound it.
Yeah.
That's why they make ball peen hammers. That's where that got the name from, it's for peening.
Oh, hail damage, counterfeiter. That was in Northfield, I swear to God.
Roofing inspector hammer. I've been down in the,
They can tell
bomb
that.
shelters, so it's hard to tell.
Got a little lead put on there, huh?
Huge, yeah, huge pop.
Since I got a 1/8 collet in
Got
there.
a series of holes all the way up to
And then I tried once where I did that and then I just
20 feet.
took my Dremel tool
You
and
think that that thing would stick?
concaved it on
Yeah,
the
I want to
inside.
put a little lead on this here. So since I got a 1/8 collet in here, and I'm using 1/8 rod, I just chuck it up in there.
What are you doing now?
Putting a little taper on it to give myself a little lead in.
Oh,
for that
because you didn't have
misalignment.
it aligned? That looked pretty good to me, for my standards.
Not really.
You didn't have the cheaters.
see the-
on.
I can
Well,
see
you
the-
got cheaters, but not big enough
I
cheaters.
can see the light through there.
Yeah, I can see more clear.
Something's gotta give.
Yeah, get yourself something with a hole in it, so you can pound it all the way through.
Without hair.
Yeah. Get them out.
I split my handle.
Oh.
We ain't gonna worry about it.
They're crooked doing it.
I'm just rushing this here.
Cherry
It's not gonna do anything. Where's my old hacksaw blade knife? All right,
Drilled a new hole.
I screwed it up,
You know, I don't know if it's
and I'm gonna take that out of there. Actually, in reality, if I was making this for myself,
Probably just some 5-minute fix.
a little epoxy. You can see what I did, I messed it up.
Holy ball, that is quite an angle on that.
Yeah, a little epoxy, and by the time you peen it in there, it ain't never gonna come out anyway.
Little J-weld.
My grandson
What
comes
my
over,
intent
pulls it off and
was,
drops it on the-
okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm still gonna follow through with what I was gonna do. Head on the end of it. It's a lengthy process, but it's a good one.
gotta do it.
Somebody gotta do it.
So you're not just hitting the top all the time, you're kind of hitting the sides.
Yeah, I'm
going
working
around.
it down,
Okay.
and the thing is, when you're peening it, you're not only mushrooming the top, you're compressing
Compressing
it.
it.
Yeah.
And that whole thing is getting bigger all the way down.
Expanding,
It's locking it in there.
Sure.
So it's not like a 3-hit process.
No,
That's
you're
what
gonna
I'm
sit,
doing
you're
wrong.
gonna sit here for 15
That's where you went wrong.
doing this.
Longer.
And a more solid work table would be
Just
better.
like when you used to be a young stud, you know, the longer
Yeah.
strokes, longer, bigger strokes, you know?
Let's walk down the hill.
If you start really laying on it with a bigger hammer, what you're gonna do is start fracturing the brass, and it's gonna start cracking away.
Hardening.
You don't, well, the hardening, it doesn't matter. It's true you are work hardening it when you're beating on it, but you don't wanna fracture it so it starts cracking away. You wanna flow the metal. And I'm kind of rocking it back and forth, you know, so I'm working the whole top surface.
You don't want your knife handle at its finished state at this point either, do you? I mean, you still want to, is that,
This is pretty much finished. I will end up sanding on it
Okay.
after I'm finished. You know, I'm gonna slide off and whack
Oh, yeah.
it once in a while and put a ding in it, but,
I can guarantee you.
yeah, you could pretty it up a little more after you're finished here. Pass it around, and you can see what's starting to happen. It's starting to mushroom out. And you want to do it uniformly, so you spread it all around the whole diameter. I'm just going to finish one of these here.
No.
That's for wimps. A real toolmaker wouldn't even own such a thing like that. That's if you're a cheater. That's why they make ball peen hammers.
You ever try falling on a lineman's belt and the copper ribbon?
See that technique? I know how
Well, it would be nicer if I had a nice stable workbench.
They wouldn't bounce on you?
Okay, I'm not gonna finish this, but pass that around. You can see the direction it's going. If you get to a point where you're up far enough that as you're peening, you got this humongous big mushroom, it doesn't hurt to take a file and take a little bit of the crown off. Do not file it down to the handle though, because you'll lose the holding effect of the head.
Okay.
See, once these were peened out, then I took a file and cleaned it up, but that's after it's spread out. Then you can